Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to the Nichecache. We're from theniche-cache.com, where you can read about some Aotearoa sporting thingy-majigs if you like a good old read, if you like to just scroll through some stats, words, bits and pieces, head on over to our website, theniche-cache.com, and this is our weekly podcast that we do most Tuesdays, unless it's Christmas, unless it's New Year's. And what we're going to try do is do the big old podcast next Monday and then maybe the following Monday as well, just to make sure we're covering Aotearoa sport to the best of our ability during the festive period. And we might need to put the bonus podcast for the folks on Patreon and anyone with a paid Substack subscription. We might be putting that on pause for this 2-week period because that's just a bit too much to do over the festive period. But we will try and do something for the folks on Patreon and anyone with a paid Substack subscription, whether it's just a Q&A or something. We'll try get something out in that phase because obviously the folks on Patreon and the folks with a paid Substack subscription keep us rocking and rolling, moving and grooving. So big up to everyone on Patreon. Big up to everyone who has signed up for our newsletter via Substack. The newsletter on Monday and Friday is completely free, full of Aotearoa sporting information, and you can choose to upgrade to a paid Substack subscription if you're feeling generous. That gets you access to the bonus podcast every week, as well as obviously on Patreon. And we've had a nice steady supply of folks donating on Buy Me a Coffee, which is greatly appreciated at this time of year because obviously you got to pay for the old shenanigans as well as just maintenance costs. Let's go with that. So big up to everyone on Buy Me a Coffee. Your support and your kind words is also greatly appreciated. But of course, everyone is out there trying to do their best, be a good person, have a smile, have some generosity, have some gratitude. So regardless of whether you're on Patreon, regardless of whether you're signed up to our newsletter, regardless of whether you've been donating through Buy Me a Coffee, your presence here with us in the podcast realms on YouTube is greatly appreciated. And we thank you for your ongoing eardrums, your ongoing eyeballs, and just rocking and rolling, moving and grooving once again with the niche cache. I have a little question before we get into the mindfulness because I've been feeling the vibe. I think ultimately it's a positive vibe because I work my way to a feeling of people just love these dudes. The Kiwi sporting public, they just love these dudes. So regardless of how I felt about Shaun Johnson when he was losing 9 consecutive games for the Warriors this year, regardless of whether I'm watching Tim Southee just not take any wickets, 1 wicket, no wicket, 2 wicket, and kind of have the worst year of test bowling that he's ever had, regardless of the niggle, regardless of me trying to be different, or regardless of seeing the forest through the trees. I think we had a better term that we made up once upon a time for the
about Chris Wood, eh?
Yeah, seeing the fruit through the leaves is the one I was thinking of. Seeing the fruit through the leaves. When you look up at the avocado tree, you can see the avocado, but you need to look through the leaves to see the avocado. But we've also got seeing the woodsman in the forest, I reckon, is what we're thinking of. So being able to do that, get through your own bias, get through your own niggle, and then you just watch how these dudes are loved. Right, Shaun Johnson, he's loved. He made the fans feel happy. And that's important. I think Tim Southee is the same way. People just like Tim Southee. Now, a lot of people might not like Shaun Johnson. A lot of loud people might not necessarily like Tim Southee. But the average Kiwi sports folk, they love a bit of Southee. They like watching Southee bang sixes. They like watching Southee swing the ball. And I don't want to spread too much of my own melancholy on these situations. You just watch how the people react, watch how the people celebrate them. That's cool. It's good for Aotearoa. My question, though, because that melancholy is heavy, the darkness does rise within me every day, and my mindfulness is actually that it's a daily battle getting through the darkness to get to the light. You got to balance it out every day, and that's just something to tap in with at this time of year. But as I ramble along, my question is, which team, the Warriors of Aotearoa or the Blackcaps, will be better without Shaun Johnson or Tim Southee, which is basically setting up the 2025. Although I don't know if Tim Southee's retiring from ODI cricket, so he might be still in that Champions Trophy mix, so it'll be interesting to tap in there. But just gut feel, who will be better after these retirements? The Warriors after losing Shaun Johnson, the Blackcaps after losing Tim Southee. What do you reckon?
Well, I do wonder if there is something, if like the fact that Southee and Johnson also get a fair amount of hate, but then also as the time they've retired, there's come out with this just like overwhelming, we love these guys kind of vibe from the people. I wonder if those things are related. Like maybe there's an element of we love this guy, but he's playing bad, therefore I feel more let down, so I'm going to criticize Shaun Johnson even more because I don't know because I want to see him succeed. I wonder if there's something in that. I don't know, but I'm not a sociologist or anything. I can't do the study to work that out and find out if that's true or not. So I'll just float it out there as an idea. Who'll be better next year? I think there's a trick question to this, or a trapdoor to this question, which is that does Devon Conway stay out of the Blackcaps test team as well?
D. Conway's not coming back. That casual contract is getting pretty casual because there's other dudes who are scoring runs, and I don't know if Conway really wants that smoke. So I am going to predict that a few months ago, I was predicting that Devon Conway is going to kind of dip out of the whole Blackcaps equation, and that seems like it's going to keep happening because that's my prediction for next year. But how does that interact with the Southee Johnson conundrum?
Well, based on what we've seen in the third test against England, where Tim Southee did play and Devon Conway did not play, and Will Young scored some runs in place of Devon Conway. And by scoring some runs, the Blackcaps actually got a nice little platform, and let Kane Williamson and also, I think, quite importantly, guys like Ravindra and Mitchell come in at more favourable times. And they scored runs as a team and batted and bowled very well. And hopefully we're recording this before day 4. So, but everything is on track towards a nice losing streak breaking test victory with Tim Southee, but without Devon Conway. I suspect that we're keeping both of those guys out of the team. I reckon maybe the Blackcaps will exceed the Warriors in 2025. If Devon Conway's coming back in, and we're going to squeeze everything around and try and make that work, and it will be a little bit more on the fence. Not specifically because of Devon Conway, but also because I think that might suggest something in the Blackcaps selection and thinking that it would be, whatever the opposite of that would be detrimental in other areas as well. In other words, they wouldn't have learned a lesson.
I agree, Nick. That is aligned with something I was thinking about, where a lot of the Blackcaps calls and their faith in players and all that stuff, that stems from a time of excellence. And that excellence has kind of diminished, but they're still making decisions the same way. So we're an awesome cricket team, so the guy who's out of form, we can keep him around to show faith. But you're not quite an excellent cricket team anymore, so maybe you shouldn't be operating from the same mindset. But that's maybe their mana is just so immense that they keep that winning culture regardless of how much they kind of stink. But I think my question was actually a trick question, because my answer is both. I think the Warriors and the Blackcaps will be better next year, and obviously we have more cricket to discuss in a jiffy. Also going to be rolling through the A-League games. We've got a Wellington Phoenix women victory, Wellington Phoenix men loss, and an Auckland FC draw. So we had the holy trinity of footballing results for our 3 A-League teams.
Not quite, because the Phoenix women drew in away to Melbourne Victory. It only felt like a win because
Oh,
it was
righto.
away to Melbourne Victory.
Righto, my bad.
So we actually had for the first time ever, we actually had 3 New Zealand A-League teams playing in the same weekend and none of them winning. We've always had at least one win so far since Auckland FC got going.
Right, because Manaia Elliott scored the goal to seal the draw with an absolute booming header. And then if you haven't seen it on Twitter, I did comment on Zoe McMeekin's missed tackle on Manaia Elliott because she came in from the side, big old shoulder shot, and just fell off the tackle. And Manaia Elliott went through to score a try with her teammates. So bit of a giggle
Got to
there.
go low, got to go around the legs there. Manaia Elliott's just too much of a nugget in that situation. She's too strong, you know. You gotta get her low.
Matthew Tomoko?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
That's actually quite a good off the hand comparison, you know.
I mean, but
Matthew
going around
Tomoko would have scored that header as well.
tackling around the legs isn't cool, you know. You don't get highlights packages from tackling around the legs. You got to go in up top.
You don't bend them backwards when you hit them in the legs, yeah. But you do get them to the ground.
Completely illegal these days, but if you're not playing rugby, who's to say what's legal and what's not legal? Because they are playing football where the shoulder charge is welcome, and that's we did see an Alex Paulson bump off earlier in the season at Mount Smart as well. So good to see a bit of rugged mahi in the A-League. We got a White Ferns squad to talk about. We got maybe a bit of Plunkett Shield. We got some Super Smash. We got Halliburton Johnston Shield. We got lots of domestic cricket, and we've got a few hard and fast matters to get through first. But I need your proper mindfulness. Vamos.
Vamos. What's the French for vamos? I don't know what that would be.
I don't know. Don't care.
Yeah. Well, I ask because I've got a Frenchman's mindfulness today from French novelist Jean Giono. All of man's mistakes arise because he imagines that he walks upon a lifeless thing, whereas his footprints imprint themselves in a flesh full of vital power. In other words, the earth is a living thing, and when you stomp over it and treat it like it's a commodity, you're making a mistake. You're causing problems. Tread softly.
Tread softly. I agree. I don't have much feedback. That's a good one. And there's definitely, if you get into the nitty gritty of Mother Nature, you realize that there's some crazy stuff happening. Whether you want to say it's magical.
There is, and it happens in ways that you can't predict as well. So when you do one thing, you get these butterfly effects in all sorts of other areas, which you didn't necessarily see coming. Another reason why tread softly, because you kind of don't know what you're doing. You're interacting with a living being. And well, you're not even interacting with it because you're just part of it, basically.
There you go. Although, in my infinite wisdom, I can predict that the sun's going to rise tomorrow.
Well, a matter of perspective, because technically the sun doesn't really do anything. The earth just swerves around, you know. It's just moving from shadow into light.
If you want to be really pedantic, yes, I agree. But you can. There's a lot of. Yeah, we're going crazy here. Let's get back to the sport. I think the Breakers had another loss, and where are they on the ladder?
You don't have to think about that. Yeah.
They are now second to last.
They've gone from second place to second to last on a 6-game winning streak, in which they've lost every single one of those 6 games by at least double digits and an average losing margin of 22 points. You can tell I'm working on an article about them, by the way. I can just reel these things off.
But you did say a 6-game winning streak, so I don't know if you have got yourself too deep into the Negros.
6-game winning streak for Breakers opponents.
That's correct. So the Breakers have lost 6 games since signing big man Tako Fall.
Indeed.
Righto. So now that's got to be one of the craziest player signings. But as we've discussed, more notably, player exits in losing Freddie Gillespie. It's got to be one of the most crazy player transfer decisions that I can remember in New Zealand sport. Because the Breakers, they were right up there with where Illawarra now is, top of the table. I don't think there's a lot of Kiwis in Illawarra, correct?
No, I
Yeah,
think
we've
they're the
discussed
one
that
team
before.
that doesn't have a Kiwi at all.
But we've still got Melbourne United full of Kiwis. They are second. Sydney, I think we've got Leafa third. Perth, we know them. Russo Nance, Hiram Harris, and Ty Webster. So that was where the Breakers were a few weeks ago. And now they are second to last, 7-9. However, they are far better than Cairns, who are 3-13. So I don't know if the Breakers can get worse, but there is room for them to get worse. Obviously, there's room for them to get much better as well. Has there been any notable NBL stuff? I did see you writing about Rob Lowe in the newsletter yesterday. Is there anything aside from Rob Lowe? Because we have talked a lot about Rob Lowe. You dropped his first 11 games, 16 minutes, last 8 games, 24 minutes, big increase in points, almost 10 more points per game between these two phases. Lots more assists, far better three-point shooting. So Rob Lowe has been fantastic over the past few weeks. I'm not sure if you want to, because we talk a lot about the Breakers, so I don't know if there's anything new to say in the podcast format, but you do have a deep dive coming up for our website. Rob Lowe, or is there any other notable Kiwi NBL wrinkles from the past week that you want to highlight?
Well, Rob Lowe's streak of form, his sort of sudden, I won't say emergence, but re-emergence, because he's been a great player for a long time, but this little streak that he's on at the moment came directly after the game where the Breakers went and thrashed Melbourne in Melbourne, which feels like so long ago now. It was probably only 2 months ago, maybe not even that. So he's he took some lessons on board there. The Breakers obviously didn't, because they went on to then. I actually can't even think of another example that compares to that in terms of like a self-inflicted downfall in the middle of a season when a team was doing well and it's like, let's change things for no particular reason, and then it backfires this drastically. It's kind of insane. Like normally when that happens, it's an injury or something, but here it was like they volunteered, like they decided to make a change to the roster, which, well, the ownership decided to make a change. The coach is on board saying he didn't. It was a decision that came above him. He didn't have anything to do with it. So you're inflicting this upon your rookie head coach as well, which makes it even more crazy. But yeah, I mean, Melbourne United I think they did get up to first briefly, or at least within range, but because they went on a 5-game winning streak on the back of Rob Lowe's recent excellence. But then they lost both games over the weekend, and they've lost 3 in a row now. So Rob Lowe's continued to score good points and shoot well from distance. He actually shot terribly from threes at the start of the season. The difference between the 3-pointers and the stat stuff, the highlight in the newsletter, was kind of insane. But yeah,
that is to your point. That is 20% 3-pointers in his first 11 games, 56 3-pointers. 56% on 3-pointers in his last 8 games, so he's shooting more than half of his 3-pointers into the net. Congratulations.
That's almost as good. Well, in fact, that's even better than the percentage of 3-pointers against the Breakers during their last 6 games, which has gone crazy. There's some good stats that I'll have in the article that I don't have on hand, but yeah, read the Breakers yarn if you want to read about how genuinely pathetic they've been in this little run, particularly defensively, because they've had a couple really nice scoring games, a couple, like 2 out of 6 kind of thing, where they've been able to somewhat keep distance, but they're giving up. I don't think their first 10 games, I don't think they allowed an opponent to score over 90 points in a game. This is 1 or 2, I can't remember, but like they were a decent defensive team, and now they're abysmal. Like they're far and away the worst team over this stretch defensively, which is, check the article for the good stats. Beyond that, Melbourne United, a little bit of a stumble, but I think they're just a good team. They'll be fine. And the one bummer of recent times is that I think Sam Wardenberg got injured for Cairns, where he was just coming into similar amounts of, like, at a time where Cairns really needed it too, because they kind of suck. worse than the Breakers at the moment. They're last because they've been bad all season. But he was really starting to hit a next level for them, and then he's out injured at the moment. So hopefully not too long on the sidelines. But yeah, I don't know how that'll go. But other than that, the guys you expect are just churning along. Shaylee's doing good things. Ty Webster's having his moments. Ty Webster's having his moments playing alongside Bryce Cotton, who I think has scored 40 points in like 4 or 5 consecutive games, something like that, which peaks with the 50, was it 58 or 59 points? I can't remember that he scored against the Breakers during the Breakers' recent capitulation. So we're in that grind of the season in the NBL, but the guys that you expect to be grinding away are grinding away as the Breakers tumble off into the distance.
We also have Tauihi grand final coming up this weekend between the Whai and the Tokomanawa Queens, which does not seem to... So the Tokomanawa Queens defeated the Northern Kahu.
No, they defeated the mainland Pokai. The Tonga Whai beat Northern Kahu, yeah.
Because earlier in the season, we checked in with the Northern Kahu, and they were a dominant team with lots of high-quality basketballers. Like some of the best players from Aotearoa are kind of stacked into the Northern Kahu team. And looking at the standings here, you can tell I'm obviously struggling to add Tauihi basketball to the strong repertoire of Aotearoa sporting action going on at the moment. So I am talking from a very casual perspective, but I'll keep talking machine. Mainland Poakai top of the table. Northern Kahu are second. Poakai 8-4. Northern Kahu 7-5. Neither of them are in the final, where we have the Whai and Tokomanawa Queens, who are 6-6, third and fourth in a 5-team competition. How has this happened?
How has this happened? I mean, I guess the one thing to say about it is, because what'd you say the Rowie Pokai were 8-4, Queens were 6-6. There's only 2 wins between the first and fourth team. Like there's not a crazy margin. It's not like Mainland ran away and won 11 of 12 games or anything like that. Didn't have a big long winning streak like their brothers, the Canterbury Rams, did during the men's NBL earlier this season, when they went on a big winning streak through the bulk of the season and then carried that on to win the championship, back-to-back championships for them. Unfortunately, Canterbury Basketball Dynasty wasn't able to continue in that way. But yeah, the funny thing about that is, for the first time, because the first 2 seasons of Tauihi, this sort of format, what they've done is they've had like a finals weekend where everyone goes and play semi-finals on a Friday and the final on the Sunday or something like that. Like get it done, everyone in the same city kind of thing. Here they split it up, so you have the semis one week, the final the next week, and that way they're able to have, for the first time, home court advantage. So Mainland were able to have, like, they weren't just the first seed, they were able to play in front of their home crowd. Same with the Kahu, they were able to play in front of their home crowd. And the first year that the Tauihi Basketball League has had home court advantage for the semi-finals, the 2 home court teams lost. So I don't know what that says or what that's meant to mean, but I mean, it was a close league where there's not a lot between the best teams. So there is a little, well, more than a little, but there's quite a bit of just like, can you turn up on the day kind of thing. Like for the Kahu, Talia Tapaya shot 2 of 11 from the field, and including 0 of 6 from 3-pointers. Like that's probably not ideal when that comes along in a semi-final sort of thing. And McKenna Dale, on the other hand, scored 23 points for the Whai. So it's been a league where, because they just boosted all the import stuff, generally it's the imports who decide who wins or loses, and you got 1 or 2 Kiwis that get good minutes each game, and then the rest are kind of just like on the fringes, learning and developing, but maybe not getting a lot of oops, I dropped my phone. Not getting a lot of what do you call it, like sort of specific opportunities to play and to get good minutes and to put stats up and get noticed that way, which has been frustrating to an extent, because it's one reason why I've struggled to get fully on board as well. Is like, I just want to see the Kiwi players play, and I don't necessarily want to see a game held in New Zealand but with like 8 of the 10 players on the court being Australian/overseas players, like Australian/Americans mostly, but not entirely. But the quality of basketball has been very good. The semi-finals brought up a couple of upsets, and because of that, we've got Tokomanawa Queens against Tauihi in the final next week, which must be who hosts that? It must be Tauihi because they were slightly better in terms of points differential. Well, actually, quite a bit better in terms of points differential, despite having the same 6-6 records. So. Yeah, well, if that carries on, then if the trend carries on, then Tokomanawa should feel pretty good about going and springing another away team upset there, though I don't think it'd actually be that much of an upset. Their best Kiwi player is Defensive Player of the Year, anointed, Stella Beck. So we know how much the defensive aspects of the game come into focus when you get into knockout stuff, when you get into kind of championship type games. They've got, a hearty Kiwi leader in there who is just been announced as one of the major award winners as Defensive Player of the Year. That seems like a pretty handy thing to be taken into the final. Both these semi-finals were pretty low-scoring games as well. 75-70, and the Queens won, and the Fire won 78-63. So not overwhelmingly low-scoring games, but certainly not high-scoring games. Kind of, you fight for your points, kind of thing. So should be a good final next week. Should be a good game.
I don't think Chris Wood scored this weekend.
Well, it's just semantics. He scored, but it didn't count. He had a goal disallowed, so technically, no, he didn't score.
Shout out to the big boss man, Va, for, I assume, stopping Chris Wood score his goal. So, screw you, Va. Unless you're working in our favour for Auckland FC, Wellington Phoenix, or in Chris Wood in the future. Maybe even thenichecache. Maybe India Page Riley benefits. Do they have Va in the Women's League?
No, I don't think they do. But, we'll save it for a World Cup or something like that. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. What is your favorite Chris Wood nugget right now?
Well, my favorite Chris Wood nugget from the weekend. And if you see the goal, because the goal that he was supposed to score, well, he did score it. He tapped it in from a Anthony Elanga sort of square ball. It's just that Elanga had been very, very marginally offside in the build-up, where he'd run into the area and his shoulder was offside leaning forward, even though he was running onto a ball on the ground. So his shoulder was kind of irrelevant in the process and his feet were onside, but that's not how the rule works. So, that's what it is.
Chris Wood wasn't offside. And then where are we at with Chris Wood offsides this season? Do you have any?
He is up there. Well, the thing is, this is what I liked about that move, is that Chris Wood was offside the whole time until the point where it counted. Like he was thinking there was going to be a cross coming in from the left side from Callum Hudson-Odoi. So he makes a run in behind. It doesn't come. Rather than retreat back to get onside as the ball gets switched out to the other side and then they go down that way and then get the cross in from that side. Rather than run back onside to make sure he's there, he just stays there. He just stays offside. And because he's offside, the defense don't focus on him. They're trying to stay in a line. They're trying to defend against the through ball. So they step up focusing on that. He just hangs in the offside position, knowing that the ball's not coming to him on this phase. The ball's coming to him in the next phase. Like the first pass is going to someone else and then it comes back across. So he just hovers in this moment, which allows him to stay, which keeps him offside through that, but allows him to be onside when Elanga makes the overlapping run to get past Chris Wood, thus playing Chris Wood back onside. Square ball, he taps it in, doesn't count. But you see some very, very clever movement in there. And I thought the same thing was true if you look at the winning goal that they scored, because Forest, despite that goal not counting, they still came back, scored a couple more, and won 2-1 against Aston Villa to sit fourth on the table at the moment, which is crazy because that's a Champions League qualifying spot, and there's 16 games in the season. They're nearly halfway through. And I don't know if I don't expect them to be able to hold on to a Champions League spot, but like they're up there and they very well could qualify for Europe, which is something Chris Wood's only done twice in his career, once with Burnley and Europa League qualifiers, and once he actually made it to the Europa League itself when he was with Birmingham on loan way back. This was like 12 years ago when he was with Birmingham. But for that last goal, for the winning goal, you see as well where there's an instance where remember who puts the cross in. It might have even been Hudson-Odoi again, or it was someone anyway. It was Drake. No, it was Elliot Anderson. Wins the ball, drives to the byline, cuts it back across, and you can see Chris Wood hovering at the far post. And then you see the cross get cut back towards Alanga. And then you see, and he's sort of just in the middle of the 6-yard box. And then you see Chris Wood adjusting his position to make sure he gets back behind Alanga. So if Alanga misses it, Chris Wood's going to pounce on it. And he was right there in the trajectory where it would have been his shot if Alanga hadn't hit it. Alanga did hit it. Alanga scored. But you could still see the ways in which Chris Wood might have scored that, you know? And there's things like this that he does a lot where it's like there's subtle movements, there's small movements. It's not like a bursting run in behind. He sprints 20 meters or something and outruns a dude. Like, I don't know, the vision in my head when I say that is Costa Barbarouses gassing past Tommy Smith in the derby the other week. But yeah, these sneaky, clever bits of movement from Wood, which more than anything are about anticipation. Like he's reacting to something that hasn't happened yet. And I was looking through some stuff on him just to stay, just stay alert on this. And on The Athletic, they had an article about like, I don't know, what makes Chris Wood the best striker in the world or something like that. I might be paraphrasing that title, but it was like one of them little oral history type things where they just talk to a bunch of people and ask them, and the article is just some quotes. But there's a very good quote from his coach where they asked him, Nuno Espirito Santo, asked him at one of the press conferences, like, what makes Chris Wood so effective? And Nuno says so many things. His movement. Chris predicts 5 seconds before what the next 2 or 3 things to happen will be. It's something you only acquire through time, realizing the tempo of the game, knowing what your teammate is going to do. He anticipates where the space will be. It's not something you can coach. It's in him already, thank God. And then former Nottingham Forest forward Robbie Earnshaw was asked something similar, and then he said, you know what scores you goals? Movement. There are the little moments, the 2 or 3 seconds before, where you have to put yourself in the right place at the right time. Then it's down to your finishing. But the movement is what gets you the chances. He creates space. He is not an old school target man. He is much more, he has decent speed. I don't think that's true, but whatever. He gets in behind and he gets himself one-on-ones. Those are true. Then there was the goal against Leicester where he turned brilliantly, found the bottom corner. He scores from all sorts of situations. Like that's cool. It's a nice little like ex-Premier League striker given some good hype. But both of those two guys highlighted on the same thing I had already thought about watching a Nottingham Forest game in which Chris Wood didn't score a goal, but did have a couple of moments where you could see how he might have scored goals and why he's been scoring a lot of goals this season because of those little anticipatory movements. And when you're in the penalty area, it doesn't have to be a big burst. In fact, the smaller, the subtler it is, the better, because you're close to the goal. You just need that little bit of like sneak a leg past the defender in order to poke the ball through or something like that. It's like it's small, it's subtle things. And the more you watch Chris Wood focusing on these kind of stuff, the more you see how he does that. He's not a striker who gets a whole lot of touches. I think his touches are actually down this season compared to last season, which is funny when you think about, hey, he's pretty good last season. He scored 14 goals last season. He's got 10 before Christmas this season, so he's going to go past 14, barring any injuries or setbacks or whatever, on the trajectory that he's currently gone. And you track that and you see just how well he fits into this Nottingham Forest team and the way in which they're allowing him to just play this very simple game where it's just be around the areas where you can score goals and try to score those goals. This is how he does that. It's these deceptive, anticipatory, clever movements where he's predicting, like he's looking at a winger, getting into space to cross, and he's predicting where that ball is going to end up before the cross has even happened. And that's what gets you that little jump on the defender. That's what gets you into these spots where you can get as many close range goals as he does, because he doesn't score a lot from outside the penalty area. He doesn't take a lot of shots. The ones he does take are the ones that counts because he's getting himself in the best possible situations. And then, your natural striker's instincts do the rest in terms of finishing things off. But like Robbie Earnshaw said, it's the movement that gets you the chances.
I've got an interesting tie into Auckland FC that I'll discuss later on, but it's a reminder that you can't always look at the physical attributes, and that's always the weird thing about like combine testing and stuff like that is it doesn't measure your positioning. It doesn't measure how you read the game. And I mean, I'm not saying that Chris Wood is the footballing equivalent of Cameron Smith, the rugby league player, because the footballing equivalent of Cameron Smith is like Messi, Ronaldo, Zidane type of stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, Chris Wood's not quite on that tier, but Chris Wood's not very fast. He's not very explosive. He's not. He doesn't have the razzle dazzle of Marco Rojas, which we saw in full display for the Wellington Phoenix. He doesn't have those attributes, but he's always in the right spot. He's always making the right movement, as you say, and that's something that Cameron Smith always did, is he just made the right decisions. He's not very fast. He's not very big. He's not going to put a whack on you. He's not going to step you, but he's always going to set up tries. He's always going to win rugby league games, and that's something that Chris Wood does very well. So it's a reminder when you're assessing young talent, when you're assessing up and coming talent, or you're trying to figure out what the potential, upside, forecasting, those type of things with an athlete, you kind of got to watch them and just see what happens. Do they make good things happen? Do they score goals? Do they stop goals? Rather than, oh my God, he's so fast. And it's like a cricket. I don't know if there's a cricket example, but the thing that came to my mind was Matt Henry. Matt Henry doesn't bowl 140 Ks, doesn't necessarily swing the ball, but the ball's always in the right spot, and he gives the ball a chance to do the talking. You know, I don't think that's a perfect comparison, but do you have any final thoughts there?
Well, there are a lot of examples I could think of where people have got overexcited because a footballer, for example, who plays to other sports, has like one incredible skill kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, but what else do they do? And is that one thing defendable? Is that one thing kind of like they might be super fast? Like, look how skillful this guy is. He can do a step over. Like, yeah, cool, but he can't pass more than 10 meters away from him accurately or whatever. Like, definitely echoing what you said there. When I'm watching National League games and there are young players involved, or if I'm watching age grade New Zealand stuff, the players that I am taking notice of are the ones who are not, well, if you're scoring a bunch of goals, if you're getting a bunch of assists, that stuff speaks for itself. But I'm also just looking at like who's involved the most, like who's getting lots of touches, who's trying to pull the strings and do that kind of stuff. Who's been like, maybe they're not getting goals or assists, but maybe I noticed that so-and-so was involved in the earlier build-up for a whole bunch of the chances, those types of things. Like if you're, especially when it's young play, like National League kind of context, with young players against older players, and there are some that are just like influencing things, or just a lot of good actions, basically. Like a lot of good involvements, like instances where you're doing a heap of stuff. Pia Vlock in the National League final for Auckland United is a great example of this. Like she did score a goal early on. It was a little bit of a goalkeeping error, but also she took that opportunity on herself. She took a shot and put it on target and see what happens. Nader Moreno will tell you that that's a pretty good strategy. You know, just at least ask the goalkeeper to do something, and then maybe you get lucky. But also throughout that game, Pia Vlock was drifting around and getting lots of touches in the midfield. She was trying to thread the ball through to feed her strikers and all this kind of stuff, where it's like, you're, I think 17 years old. She might not even be 17. I can't remember exactly. In a National League grand final, and you're bossing around players 10 years older than you, you know, it's like you're the one out there and instructing things. Like that's, whether she'd scored that goal at the start or not, that's a clear example of someone who's pretty clever, someone who's got like someone who knows what they're doing and is gonna it just is going to go on to be a very good footballer. And I don't know that that was always the case for Chris Wood. I think he often was someone who was a little bit behind the play when he was younger. This is despite what Espirito Santo says about this not being something that you can coach. I actually think it's quite specifically something you can coach in his case. It's probably harder in other positions, or it's definitely harder in midfield, but I think when you're a striker, you can simplify the game. So just like penalty box movements and stuff like that, where you can figure these things out. But maybe the point is not that it's coachable so much as it's just something you have to learn through experience. I'm not sure. Maybe it's that. It's you get there by trial and error. Because the thing with what we're talking about with these Chris Wood movements is like it's not even necessarily him making the right decision each time. It's just him making a proactive guess almost like because he might make a near post run thinking that the ball's going to be played in low and then it's chipped to the back post kind of thing. This is where your sort of your relationship with your teammates comes in very handy because you've got to know what their tendencies are and what they're most likely to do, and they got to know what you want, like where you want the ball as well, which I think is something that's changed a lot between previous seasons with Chris Wood and Chris Wood this season, is that his teammates are trying to get him the ball where he wants the ball rather than putting it in an area and saying, you should have been there because that's where I'm trying to cross it. It's now Chris Wood who is the priority in those moments. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is something that's developed quite significantly over his game. And even just when he was, I don't even know you saw it as much at Burnley when he was scoring a lot of goals. It was definitely there. I think it's something that really came through when he was with Leeds, when he had his sort of breakout season there in the Championship. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for his experience because people talk about him as like he's a 33-year-old straight. Like he's been asked this a few times. He's been asked this. His coach has been asked this. Like, how long can you keep scoring? And Chris Wood says, "Well, I'll keep scoring as long as I can keep scoring." I love football. I think I'm playing better than ever before, and I'm not a player who's overly reliant on athleticism, so he can keep doing this for as long as possible. And Nuno's saying, "Yeah, no, sweet as like as long as he can as long as he's scoring goals, he's in my team," kind of thing. This is it's not a thing where he's scoring these goals despite his age. I think he's in many cases scoring these goals because of his age, because he's got close to like a decade of being a very high caliber footballer in England in the Championship and then in the Premier League, looking just I don't know, gathering information the whole time on how defenders operate and where the space is and how to anticipate these things. And like he's someone who stays focused on this stuff, and it's paying off pretty substantially right now. But it's something that I think has gotten better in his game basically year on year on year throughout his career.
I think it's a very similar story for two of the recent contract extensions, I believe they are, for the Warriors. We've got Demitric Vaimauga and Ieremia-Toeava have both been extended, re-signed by the Warriors. First and foremost, housekeeping. Demitric Sifakula is now known as Demitric Vaimauga, and Ieremia-Toeava is now officially an Otahuhu Junior. So they're both Otahuhu Juniors, which is a nifty little wrinkle there. Vaimauga was an Otahuhu Junior, already had that locked and loaded. Ieremia-Toeava wasn't playing much rugby league, I don't think, during his time with the De La Salle College First 15, and then he started to appear for Otara in the Fox Memorial, playing alongside a bunch of other Warriors, but playing men's footy for Otara. And so it's good to have him confirmed as an Otahuhu Junior. Having those kind of little touch points is very important for me in the Kiwi-NRL department. And that little wrinkle there is quite important because I did the latest Kiwi-NRL summer guide, and there was a trend of the Panthers. So two of the Kiwi-NRL middle forwards there, Preston Ricky and Austin Diaz. Tanifado Jr., Austin Diaz, Preston Ricky from the Hokianga. Preston Ricky joined the Panthers from the Redcliffe Warriors, and Austin Diaz joined the Panthers mid-season this year from the Sea Eagles, I believe. Both of them have played at least 6 seasons of reserve grade. So that's an interesting trend for the Panthers, because I think that's quite deliberate for the Panthers in just having those type of dudes, both of whom are fairly cheap on the salary cap, steady, mature middle forwards who can step up to play NRL because they've both played NRL. The other thing for the Panthers is there's a dude, David Fale. He's a Marist junior from Auckland who the only thing I could find about him was him playing for the Auckland under-19 team against a touring French outfit. And David Fale was playing alongside Raymond Tuaimalo-Vainga, who's another Marist junior who is now with the Sea Eagles. But David Fale left Auckland, spent some time in Canberra, and and then moved to St Mary's, which is a local rugby league club in the Penrith area. I don't want to get too deep into the Sydney Rugby League grassroots landscape, but basically St Mary's is a club that is in the Penrith vicinity, and that follows on from Trent Tauihi, who was in the Aotearoa Kiwis squad. He earned his Panthers opportunities by starting with St Mary's. David Fale left the Canberra area to play for St Mary's. Then he got promoted to the Panthers system, playing New South Wales Cup this year. So the Panthers, not only do they have solid, reliable New South Wales Cup forwards capable of stepping up to the NRL, they utilize the teams below, like if you're over the age of 21 or you're too good for under 21s, you need to be playing against men, but you're not playing New South Wales Cup, you still need to play a game. And the Panthers seem to be very deliberate in building out their style of play, style of players, learning the system. The best way to do that is if you're not playing New South Wales Cup, you're playing for St Mary's. Because Trent Tauihi was a pretty good half in the Melbourne Storm system, and he couldn't stay at the Storm because he's from Melbourne, but apparently the Storm didn't want him, whatever. No other team in Sydney really wanted him, so he started playing for St Mary's and played his way into the Panthers setup. What's this got to do with Vaimauga or Ieremia? More so Ieremia-Toeava. The Warriors, like this is, again, it's the similarities between the Warriors and the Panthers. Other teams do this, like the Bulldogs have a pretty good, I think it's like Sydney Shield or Ron Massey Cup, something like that. Though the Bulldogs, I've seen a few of their up-and-coming players, whether it's maybe Bronson Rubin. I did see him from Canterbury, young half from Canterbury. He was playing a few of those men's games in Sydney. But the Warriors have that. So Ieremia-Toeava, Kalis Fatialofa, they were playing for Otara last year. Otara is not necessarily like that's when they're trying to qualify for the top tier Fox Memorial, and the season starts with a qualification period. But they were like basically SG ball players who I suspect the Warriors wanted to be playing against grown men. And usually that means the Warriors put them into Point Chevalier, which has strong links to the Warriors. There's also Mount Albert, which has John Ackland as coach, at least for this year. A lot of young Warriors were playing for Fox Memorial for Mount Albert against grown men. Regardless of their age, they were playing for a very good development coach in John Ackland. Similar for Otahu, because Makai Tafua came up from Christchurch, and when he wasn't playing New South Wales Cup, he was playing for Otahu. Howick has some strong links to the Warriors as well. So if you, like those Otara dudes, when they didn't qualify for Fox Memorial, they went over to Howick. Now you can get into the intricacies of like how less trendy clubs lose those players, but it's basically the Warriors want their players playing the highest level of Fox Memorial. So if you don't qualify for the top tier Fox Memorial, then you're going to go play for the Warriors are going to basically put you into another club that is playing top tier Fox Memorial. All of which is to say, there's that trend of the Warriors doing similar stuff, and there's a very healthy rugby league competition in Auckland, and the Warriors have strong links to a few of these clubs where they can give young players opportunities against grown men. That's kind of the Ieremia-Toeava's story. Came out of De La Salle College where he was playing first 15. He's playing for against grown men, starting with Otara, then for Howick. But he was playing New South Wales Cup last year as an SG ball player, full season in New South Wales Cup this year, saying it all year. Ieremia was playing middle forward, edge forward, centre, wing if he needed to. I think Ieremia can play all 13 positions. He won't, like that's unrealistic, but he can. And he's doing that in New South Wales Cup. Like he's named to start in like the middle, but you end up watching the game and he's at centre. He's a very good utility player who I think can make an NRL debut this year or next year if the stars align, because he will be a fantastic bench player for an NRL team. Against like Leka Halasima, his debut came off the bench to play middle forward, ended up playing centre. That is adding value to the NRL team. Demitric Vaimauga, maybe, I don't know. He can come off the bench, he can play middle or edge. Ieremia can be on your bench and he can play middle, edge, centre. But he needs to do it consistently in New South Wales Cup to then step up to the NRL, best prepare you for the NRL grind. But this is something that you need to watch out for with the Warriors youngsters, because they are versatile. They do have experience under Andrew Webster playing New South Wales Cup, because they've all played 20, 30, 40 games in New South Wales Cup or NRL trials combined. But they are doing, in New South Wales Cup, they are playing the similar role that they will play in the NRL. And that is most evident in Ieremia-Toeava. His NRL opportunities are going to come as a versatile bench forward. That's what he's doing in New South Wales Cup. So it's good to see that. Demitric Vaimauga, fascinating, because he left De La Salle College to go to Redcliffe. And he was training with the Redcliffe Warriors when he was like 17 or something. Straight out of De La Salle College. So that's quite interesting, because it's a big move to make. But it seemed to have served him well. Gone over there with Jacob Laban, Leotawa, Zion Mai-uu, nice stuff. And he has come back to the Warriors, made his debut last year, New South Wales Cup, a lot of stuff, and very aggressive. But the funky thing here is how they both played in the same De La Salle College team, first 15 team. Demitric Vaimauga was playing in the midfield. Ieremia seems to be playing like as a loose forward. He might have dabbled in lock because he's pretty tall, but the team list that I highlighted in last Friday's newsletter, Vaimauga was the captain in number 12. I also think he played a bit of first 5, and Ieremia-Toeava was number 6, flanker. So when we're thinking about transitioning from first 15 to NRL, we've got a flanker who's played a lot of games as a centre in New South Wales Cup, and we've got a midfielder who is now primarily a middle forward, which is similar to Leo Thompson. He was a midfielder in first 15, now he's a middle forward. And you can never really predict the first 15 rugby league crossover. But Vaimauga, he's not overly fast, he's not overly big, but he is aggressive, he's a natural baller, seems to be in the right spot at the right time, similar to Chris Wood actually. So I like that for Vaimauga. I expect him to be a consistent top 17 player. Aside from Ali Leotawa maybe being the starting centre in a top 17 Warriors team next year, Vaimauga, I think, will be top 17 coming off the bench. I think Vaimauga is ahead of Leka Halasima, he's ahead of Jacob Laban, ahead of Zion Mai-uu. Then you get into Tanner Stowell-Smith, Ieremia-Toeava, and so on. But this sets up a very interesting year for Vaimauga. And again, I got to point out that De La Salle College, while both of these dudes played first 15, and a lot of the other dudes played first 15, like Patrick Moimoy, who's in the Warriors system, he came from De La Salle College first 15. There's a few, like Augustine Filippo, I believe, played De La Salle College first 15. De La Salle College is one of the best rugby league schools in New Zealand. That's a fact. Because they're right up there with St. Paul's College. St. Paul's College has the rugby league history and pedigree, but right now De La Salle College and St. Paul's College are, forgive me if I'm getting some details wrong, maybe I'm missing a school, but off the top of my head, they are the best rugby league schools in Auckland. And then you've got St. Thomas of Canterbury, back-to-back national champions, as the best rugby league school in Aotearoa. But De La Salle College is top 3, right there with St. Paul's College as the best rugby league schools in Auckland. And there's a lot of them with the Warriors. We've got Edward Kossi was kind of before this period, but Patrick Moimoi, Kalis Fatialofa, Rodney Tuipulotu-Vea, Junior Sikovea, and Augustine Filippo are all notable juniors alongside Ieremia-Toeava, Demitric Vaimauga, from De La Salle College, who are in the Warriors system. So I've talked a lot about the St. Thomas of Canterbury trend in Aotearoa Rugby League. We've talked a lot about South Island. We've talked all these various trends with the emerging talent in Aotearoa Rugby League. Ieremia-Toeava, Demitric Vaimauga extending their contracts with the Warriors only reinforces the fact that De La Salle College is a very notable rugby league school in Aotearoa, because I'll be tracking the junior squads coming out over the next month or so as well. Like, I think Larry Leha went to De La Salle College and he's now with the Tigers, off the top of my head. So you're getting a lot of Kiwi-NRL juniors coming out of De La Salle College. Most of them play in the league team, but of course, a lot of NRL talent comes from First 15 rugby, and it is also evident in Ieremia-Toeava and Demitric Vaimauga coming from De La Salle College First 15. Vaimauga was also playing league. Ieremia-Toeava was an Otahuhu junior, probably before playing First 15, came out of First 15, went straight back into rugby league, so he must have a rugby league background. It's an interesting hot pocket. Yes, and the links to the Warriors are pretty interesting as well. So it's good to see those two players extending their contracts with the Warriors. Vaimauga is someone I'm tracking as a top 17 player coming off the bench. And Ieremia-Toeava, I'm going to say he's going to make his NRL debut this year. Next season. Purely based on his versatility and what he offers the team in covering multiple positions. And that seems like an Andrew Webster type of thing, Andrew McFadden type of thing. Mitchell Barnett, edge, middle. Jackson Ford, edge, middle. Anyone else? I don't know. But those are two.
Chances Klokstad, fullback, centers, halves.
Roger Tuivasa-Sheck,
anywhere in the outside
8 out of
backs.
10 in all backline positions. Jacob Laban, a little bit edge, a little bit of middle. Leka Halasima, edge, middle, centre. Demitric Vaimauga, middle, edge. Ali Leotawa, he can play every backline position if required. He was playing fullback for Auckland under-20s. He was playing in the halves in New South Wales Cup last year. If you can play centre, you can play wing. He's played wing before. Something important that you need, given the injuries, suspensions, concussions that happen in the NRL. You need that versatility, and ideally, you need to embed that versatility earlier. I think that's the whole concept of the Panthers. They're trying to embed their style early. Either you're a local junior coming up through the Panthers system, or if you're a new arrival to the Panthers, you need to play New South Wales Cup for a season and a half. You need to start in St. Mary's because they're rolling out the same structure before you step up to New South Wales Cup. And I believe that's something similar that the Warriors are doing. What's doing with the Blackcaps? They are in the midst of their third and final test with England. It's going pretty well. But like a lot of Blackcaps, White Ferny things, it's kind of like, oh, too little, too late. They've already lost the series 2-0, but they're having a good old time. They made Ben Stokes get injured, so that was kind of... I can't say
he sort of made himself get injured by bowling about 40 overs. And
yeah.
You probably don't need to do that when you've got practically glass knees. You've got other bowlers. Didn't even use the spinner in the first innings.
But this is England. Like, I'm not going to I don't. You can say a lot of good stuff, bad stuff about England. You can say a lot of good stuff, bad stuff about the Blackcaps, but to be honest, as I alluded to last week, at the very least, England are just all in on who they are and what they do. I don't think the Blackcaps are quite at that stage where they are 100%. This is who we are. This is how we play our cricket. I don't know if that's quite crystal clear with the Blackcaps, but it is with England, good and bad. And a lot of people in this test, they seem to be loving the bad elements of England going all in on who they are and what they do. But ultimately, they've won the series, already 2-0 up, and that's good for them. I think the best thing to do right now is just to let you roll out some of your favorite Blackcap stats and figures heading into day 4, which the time of recording, England 21 for 2, chasing 658 runs.
Yeah, I just had the old Crick Info notification pop up where it says live, England needs 640 more to make it 3-0. It's cool, but I mean,
well, like, it's not unrealistic that England can chase that down.
I think it is. They're probably the one team where you think, well, they're at least going to try.
Yeah, exactly.
It's unrealistic that they're going to get there, but I guess you can say to their favor, they're at least going to give it a nudge.
That's the point. Like, Blackcaps aren't going to chase that down in 2 days. But England, the way they bat, they're going to have a crack, and that's the good and bad thing about England.
Yeah, just gotta. If Harry Brook gets a score, if Harry Brook gets off the mark, then I will start to be at least just a tiny little bit nervous, because I think Harry Brook's his record against New Zealand is absolutely insane. But one of the most insane things about it is that I think he's got like 350s, a couple 150s, another 100, something like that. And then the only 2 low scores he's got are a golden duck off Will O'Rourke in the first innings of this test match, and a diamond duck where he was run out without scoring the last time they came here. So when he gets off the mark, he's pretty dangerous against New Zealand, but you can't get him early. You can't get him within the first delivery that he faces. That's your window of opportunity. Joe Root, by the way, if he gets, I can't remember what it was like 50 odd runs or something like that, or something. It might not even be that much. In fact, I think I have it here somewhere. If he gets a score of he needs a few more. He needs 81 runs to become the highest ever run scorer against New Zealand.
Righto, shut up, Rooty. That is a genuine stat that deserves appreciation. I do want to make an official announcement, though. Do not. Well, no. I mean, you can approach me with the most runs, most wickets stats. I don't care. I do not care who has scored the most runs in the World Test Champion. I do not care who has scored the most runs this year. I don't care who's got the most wickets, because there is a clear and obvious disparity between the amount of cricket played. Most runs, most wickets don't matter if 2 or 3 teams, the most despised cricket teams in the world, are playing twice, nearly 3 times as much cricket as everyone else. If you're playing twice as much cricket, jar bless, you better score more runs than everyone else. Let alone if you're playing 3 times as much cricket as everyone else, you better be taking the most wickets or else you suck. Test cricket stats, facts, figures, they need to be about efficiency because of the disparity in the amount of cricket played. I think if we're all playing a similar amount of ODIs, similar amount of T20s, most runs, most wickets, then you can really tap into that. But, I mean, sorry to hijack your stats, facts, and figures thing here. Let me just pull up the World Test Championship. Games played. New Zealand 13 games, England 21 games. Of course, England players are going to have the most runs and most wickets. Like, let's be serious. England has played twice as much Test cricket in this World Test Championship than South Africa, than Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, West Indies. New Zealand's got 13 games, so it's not quite twice as much, but you get the point. So if you're going to hit me with any celebratory England most runs, most wicket stats, speaking to you, Nico, I don't care.
Oh, speaking to whoever.
And speaking to the fans around the cricketing world, I don't care. Hit me with some averages, hit me with some efficiency. That is the most important, when and only because there is such a large disparity in the amount of Test cricket played.
Yeah, well, to that point, Joe Root's 1,839 runs against New Zealand, plus, I think this was from last week, so plus whatever he got in the first innings, which wasn't very many, and whatever he gets in the second innings here. That's second, and he will at some point go first because he'll play against New Zealand again. First is Ieremia-Toeava from Pakistan, 1,919 runs against New Zealand. Root's done his against New Zealand an average of 54. Ieremia-Toeava did hit his 79.95. So Root averaging 54 against New Zealand is still amazing. Like that's outstanding no matter who you're scoring that against. But it's 25 runs less than what Ieremia-Toeava averaged against New Zealand for his runs. So I think you might, if I haven't got it there, but I think if you dug deeper, you'll find Joe Root's played a lot more against New Zealand than Ieremia-Toeava did.
Yeah, that's true. But this is all good because England, for Joe Root to be playing against New Zealand needs to be playing the game. So you're playing the same amount of tests.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's
for
all
those
good.
Ones, yeah. Sure.
If we're operating with a similar level of tests played, it's all good. Most runs, most wickets. Otherwise, not too fussed. But yeah, your favourite stats and whatever from the opening days of the Blackcaps test.
Well, that's why I've been tracking these the Blackcaps specific records for most runs and wickets in a calendar year, because this has been a year where they've played a lot of tests, so they've got an opportunity to actually get on some of these lists, which is why these lists don't matter that much. If you only play 6 tests in a year, you're not going to score 1,000 runs or whatever. But I was tracking Rachi Ravindra trying to get to the 1K runs in the calendar year for quite a while. Like, I've been waiting since he got 100 in India. It's like, well, he's going to do this. He's going to do this. And then he went 9 innings without passing 50 and didn't, including all 6 innings against England, and fell 16 runs short with 984 runs this year, which means that it's the 4th most runs a Blackcaps player's ever scored in a calendar year. But he didn't get to the 1K, and he's not actually the top run scorer this year, because that's Kane Williamson. Because Kane Williamson scored 156 in his last attempt, which takes him up, to 1,013 runs for the year, which is not his most, because he once scored 1,172 runs in a year, which is great. Also, this is a stat where you don't compare it, like you're saying, don't compare this to other countries because they play more and score more. But for New Zealand, Kane Williamson's done this twice now, 4 figures in a calendar year. Brendan McCullum's the only one who's ever done that. But while I was, and also Kane Williamson now for the 7th year in the last 10, he's the Blackcaps' leading run scorer in a calendar year. So the only years it hasn't been him is 2018, when Tom Latham and Henry Nicholls somehow got the exact same amount of runs. 2019, it was Ross Taylor. 2022, when Kane Williamson was injured most of the time, it was Daryl Mitchell. And the other 7 years since 2015 onwards have been Kane Williamson as the leading scorer. But while I was tracking that, I forgot to look over at the wickets, because Matt Henry's on the verge of doing something kind of crazy, because at the start of, with 8 wickets left in this England innings, he has 47 wickets at 17.95 in 2024, which is insane. Like, that's outstanding. The most ever for a New Zealander is Richard Hadley, 85, took 64 wickets at 17.43, so crazy stuff there. Daniel Vittori got 54 in 2008. Matt Henry needs 3 more to join the club. And yeah, one more thing to point out how the England stuff skews everything. Gus Atkinson himself has 52 wickets this year. So again, don't look at England stuff for most anything. But for the Blackcaps, Matt Henry's gone great.
Before we get into maybe a future Blackcaps test mixer, you got any more funky stats for us?
I have 2 more good things based on the 2 guys I've been talking most about there. One of them is a sad stat about Kane Williamson, because I'm not going to talk about his 7 Park average, which is incredible, and all the runs that he scored there and the centuries that he scored there, and the fact that he scored a century in his previous 5 tests in a row at Seddon Park, which makes him the first player in history to score a century in 5 consecutive tests at the same ground. I said I wasn't going to say that, but I just said it, so I guess I did say it. However, the sad part is that he didn't get to 200. He was out for 156. I thought there might have been a chance where he really got going and they were starting to tee off. I'm thinking, well, they're obviously not going to declare in a hurry, so he might get to 200. He didn't, and because he didn't get to 200, his 5-year streak with a double century in every one of those years is now over. He couldn't make it 6 years in a row with a double ton. He does still have 6 years in a row with at least 150 because his top score here was nothing fiddling. That was a pretty decent knock, but yeah, where the double century streak is over. Sad news. However, not as sad as actually he wasn't so much sad as angry, I think, Zach Crawley, when he got out in the for the 6th time in the innings. He looked really pissed off at the fact that he got an umpire's call on an LBW decision. It's like, well, you've already had 1 overturned so far this innings, and you're on like 5. So, if it wasn't this ball, it might have been the next ball.
He was having a little sook.
He was having a soak, and I couldn't help but feel while the commentary was talking about him being like, pissed off with the decision. I'm thinking he's probably most pissed off with the fact that he got out to Matt Henry again, and he's just using the decision as an excuse to unleash his anger. I think his real.
I think he was pissed off with the decision. I don't think he cares who he gets out to. I don't think he would be that. He would show that he was pissed off with himself in that way. I think he was purely disgusted with the decision.
You reckon not a little bit of disgust with the fact that he's been out 6 times in this series with a top score of 21, 4 of those innings being out for less than double figures. The deepest he's batted into an innings was that 21 of 14 where he was out at 32 for 1. That was the best opening partnership England managed in this entire series. And the fact that all 6 of those instances he was dismissed by Matt Henry. Twice caught him bowled, 1 caught Conway, so I can't remember where that was caught. That could have been anywhere. Twice LBW and 1 time bowled. So he's getting out in a variety of different ways to the same guy cheaply and early every single time. I reckon he might have been a little bit disgusted at that. I'm not disgusted at that though. I'm like, I think it's hilarious. I think it's an amazing stat that the same guy in a 3-match test match got this batter out every single time, and it's not even like he's a number 11. He's just coming and cleaning up the tail. He got the opening bat out 6 times in a row. I think that's hilarious. He's actually got him out twice in other test matches as well. Matt Henry has. So he's dismissed Zach Crawley 8 times, which is the most he's dismissed any batter. The next most is I think there's no one else he's dismissed more than 3 times. So there's a few guys he's got 3, but there's no one he's got 4 except for Zach Crawley, who he's gotten out 8 times. I think that's hilarious. And there's also a little trend here of Matt Henry. Well, first of all, he's just broken a Tim Southee record. So the funny thing is that Tim Southee lately is like he gets 1 wicket or he has no wickets per innings. But there was a time where he took a wicket in 33 consecutive test innings. Matt Henry just broke that New Zealand record. He's just got a wicket for the 34th innings in a row. He's taken constant wickets throughout this year. And a lot of them have been openers. He seems to have. He got Rohit Sharma a couple times. I think he got him both times in the 3rd test. When we were playing against Australia, he got Steve Smith a few times when he was still opening. He got Usman Khawaja a couple times there. So he's not just getting a wicket every innings that he bowls. Usually he's getting a lot more than 1 wicket, but he also seems to get an early wicket in most innings that he bowls. So I think there's. Even in a year where Kane Williamson scored 1,000 test runs, I think there's no doubt that Matt Henry has been New Zealand's best test player. Not even best test bowler, was best test bowlers without a doubt. I think he's been our best test player for the last 12 months, probably longer as well.
What's your vibe check on Kane Williamson's availability? Do you think because to me, Kane Williamson looks primed to play Test cricket for another 10 years.
think it's like Chris Wood. If he wants to, he if he wants to, he's going to keep scoring runs. If Chris Wood wants to keep playing, he's going to keep scoring goals. As long as they're scoring goals and scoring runs, they're going to be allowed to keep playing. So I don't think we're going to get into a situation with Kane Williamson where we've had with Tim Southee, where it's like, yeah, it's probably about time, kind of thing. He's not going to have that. So it's up to him. I mean, often it becomes less of a cricketing decision and more of like a family, personal life decision.
Yeah, that's the
But
point. Kane Williamson obviously loves his family. He also loves cricket, and playing a few tests every year just seems like something that he is
hmm,
highly capable of doing until he is 65 and ready to retire. Literally retire.
if he wants to bat until 65, we'll take him till 65. He's shown no signs of slowing down. He's just had one of his best years. So yeah, you can't predict these things because it can come on fairly fast. 2 years ago, it wouldn't have felt like Tim Southee would be done at this point, but at the same time, like he more than anyone, and I think a batter can play for longer than a bowler anyway as well because he's less wear and tear. But I think he more than anyone just seems to love what he does, and that's kind of like his comfort zone is out there in the middle. I don't see any reason why retirement should be a word associated with him for at least a few more years.
Well, mainly for my own well-being,
Yeah, it's
because
same. We need to reassure
like we
ourselves
know,
on this. I think he would retire from the other formats before Tests
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
we know. I mean, Trent Bolt could have got a like if he just retired, he would have been celebrated as a legendary black cap stepping away from the Blackcaps, and I don't really understand like the whole Trent Bolt situation. I don't really understand because he's like, oh, I haven't retired, and it's like maybe if you just retired, you would have been celebrated. Like you could have got the Tim Southee treatment, maybe even more so, and he just it's just a yeah, it's a bit weird to reflect upon. Um,
He also might just take Tim Southee's spot if he wanted to go and play some Plunket Shield and get some long form match fitness in his legs. He might just come back and play more Test cricket. He's younger than Tim Southee. I don't think that's going to happen, but
well,
he could if
this
he wanted
leads
to.
into something I want to do because I mean that's going backwards for the Black Caps, right? Same with continuing with Neil Wagner. Like this is a time where the Black Caps are moving forward, and I want to forecast a Black Caps future team. But I do want to point out right now we've got Kyle Jamieson, Ben Sears, Ben Lister, and Henry Shipley, who I do not believe have bowled a delivery this summer so far. So if you're thinking, oh my God, Will O'Rourke, he's amazing. Nathan Smith bursts onto the scene. Well, Zach Folks playing for the Black Caps as a seamer. If you're seeing Black Caps with pretty good seam bowling depth right now, and I think that's hard to argue considering we have Will O'Rourke by 145 Ks moving the ball every which way, smashing hands as he always does, ripping through any test team in the world. I think we got some pretty good seam bowling depth, and we got 4 decent seam bowlers who have not bowled this summer. So that's something to keep tucked away. My team, and this is, we have like a couple of folks have commented like about the Black Caps upcoming schedule. I don't know if we'll see it for the upcoming schedule next year, but maybe next summer. I don't know. I think you might see a Black Caps team with, or even next summer might be a bit too early because I've made some tough calls. Tom Latham, opening the batting, skippering the team. I think he has had his worst year of Test batting, but He's the captain. And that's another thing I just haven't made sense of, the whole Tim Southee captaincy situation. Like last summer, he was the captain. Now he's not the captain, he's retiring. Like, it's just a weird
So, I
thing.
mean, it happens quickly, these things, sometimes.
Yeah. Tom Latham, Reece Matayu opening the batting. Kane Williamson, number 3. Rachin Ravindra, number 4. Will Young, number 5. Mitch Hay, wicketkeeper batter, number 6. Glenn Phillips, number 7. Nathan Smith, number 8. Matt Henry's got to be in the team. Will O'Rourke's got to be in the team. And I've got one spot left. If I'm going Ben Sears, he's going to be number 10. Then we've got Will O'Rourke, number 11. Maybe, who knows? Maybe Will O'Rourke's number 10, Ben Sears is a number 11. Who knows? But if we're not going Ben Sears, I might go Zach Folks. And if I'm going Zach Folks, then he's probably going to be, he might bat a spot higher than Matt Henry. Phillips is the spinner in that team. And this is an interesting thought. If the Blackcaps do need a specialist spinner, which we are seeing in this test, Mitchell Santner is playing as a specialist spinner, reinforcing the notion of the motion and the lotion, part of the commotion. Seddon Park, Bay Oval, the most spinniest decks in Aotearoa. We haven't seen Bay Oval at a test, play a test there this season, but we've just seen it at Seddon Park. If you're playing at Seddon Park, you're playing at Bay Oval, you need a specialist spinner. That's a fact. We've seen it every summer for the last 5-6 years. But if we do need a spinner, I'm just going to keep going Santner. Maybe we go Patel. I don't think the young spinners have got to the point where they are commanding test selection. Addy Ashok's an option in the future, but I just want a reliable, steady test spinner. And I am not really looking for youth in this position. But I mean, so this doesn't include Henry Shipley, Kyle Jamieson, Ben Lister, and I'm kind of maybe Ben Sears because he's played test. But so let's take Ben Sears out. I want Zach Folks in that team. And I think that is a very good cricket team. Obviously, I've dropped Daryl Mitchell. Don't know why. Just want a younger player. That's the point of this exercise. And I've kept Will Young in the team, batting number 5. Now, if Kane Williamson does retire, I think Will Young slots into that position. But I just want Will Young in the team, and this is the thing. I'm not trying to go all in on youth, because you go all in on youth, you're going to lose. So we still need to balance the best test team that we can have. We need some experienced, reliable performers. Latham, Williamson, Ravindra, Young, Matt Henry, Will O'Rourke, Nathan Smith have played test cricket now. We've got Reece Matayu. I think he is a future long-term test opener. Mitch Hay replaces Blundell as the wicketkeeper. Then obviously if Latham shits the bed, then Reece Matayu can replace him, and we can keep opening with Will Young. There's options there. And the seam attack, moving forward is going to be pretty good, I reckon. Matt Henry leads the attack. We know we've got Will O'Rourke. We know we've got Nathan Smith. Then we've got the group of Zach Folks, Ben Sears, Ben Lister, who's a lefty, who folks won't think of because he hasn't played this summer. We need another 2-metre seamer. We got Kyle Jamieson. Maybe Henry Shipley recovers. Then you're looking at all the other seamers on the rise in Aotearoa as well. But I think that's a pretty damn good test mixer, balancing the need to refresh the team with younger players, but also maintain some steady test cricket wairua, let's say that. I don't think Daryl Mitchell's going to drop out of the test team anytime soon, though. I think he's going to be there as a good batter for the test team. But if I was going to drop him in that top 5, I'd put in Reece Matayu to open and then shuffle Will Young around, because Will Young, he's a bit of a Roger Tuivasa-Sheck in that you're going to get 8 out of 10 in any position that he bats in, right? Like, he's done it all. Sure, there are some differences in his production across those positions, but the other thing about Will Young is he scores runs in all formats. I had his last few games here, last 10 games on the Cricinfo profile. County cricket, 19, 68 not out, 2, 17. Tests in India, everyone knows what he did there, good runs. T20s in Sri Lanka, 19, 30. ODIs in Sri Lanka, 48, 26, 56 not out. Let's do a little career check for Will Young, because he does love to whack boundaries in the Super Smash as well. He's no mug in the Super Smash. Will Young, career. Test cricket, now averaging over 30, averaging a cheeky old 45.8 in ODIs. 18 in T20s. Not great, but he's also got an average of 24.6, strike rate of 130 in T20 cricket overall. Averaging 40 first class, averaging 42.7 in list A. So Will Young's 6 formats of cricket, he's averaging over 40 in 3 of them. Solid 30 in test cricket, and he's got some good T20 stuff up and down, but he's doing a job. Shout out Will Young, Mr. 8 out of 10, the cricketing Roger Tuivasa-Sheck.
Cricketing Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, because you can put him in jerseys 1 to 5, maybe even 6 at a stretch, and he'll do a great job.
Yeah? You've escalated it nicely.
There you go. I think there would be a case in that lineup to even put him at right center and put him in the number 4 position and slide Ravindra down to 5, where he can be a little bit looser and sort of earn his way up the order. I think that's an argument that could be made even now with him and Daryl Mitchell, just some of the dismissals Ravindra has had. Although, I think he quite clearly felt that and responded to that with the second innings knock against England, where he was much more patient and much more sort of trying to play straight rather than trying to play, cross bat shots early on and whatever. So I think with Ravindra, it's less of a thing where it's, I think that's just experience that he's gaining along the way. So he's, I don't think there's a drama there or anything like that. I think you can see the way in which he's improving as you got to go through, score a double 100 against South Africa, sweet as, but also the England bowling lineup is quite good and they're quite threatening and they constantly ask questions of you. So, you get the ups and downs early in a test career, which is why it's tricky. And it's why I think the Blackcaps have done quite well to kind of refrain in the past from rebuilding things. Like, you incorporate a player here or there, and then you just kind of you allow them to maybe just be with the test squad and not play a lot, like Matt Henry and Will Young have done earlier. Or, you incorporate guys a little bit. It's more of a slow cooker process rather than a deep frying situation. But this is why I think they're in quite an interesting transitional phase, is because you've listed a few guys there who you can see, like Reece Murray. You can see the way in which the scores he's putting up in Blanket Shield. You can see Blackcaps potential there. Mitch Hay is already on the, not just on the radar, he's already played for the Blackcaps and limited overs cricket. So he's right there ready to go. And when his next opportunity comes up, and you can see easily, you can envisage how those guys might be first 11 test players in 2 years' time or something. What's interesting about it is that the process has already started, because the changes you've made to that team don't include, you've made some changes to what we're seeing there between now and what might be forecast in a couple of years, but also Rachin Ravindra was the same from 2 years ago to where he is now. Like, he's gone, and Glenn Phillips, I would say, is part of that too, and Will O'Rourke is part of that. Like, they've already made some of these changes. It is not a case of everyone comes in all at once. It's a case of slowly over the course of a few years, you start incorporating a few new guys, and we're seeing what that looks like after an era where they had a very experienced team of guys all in their 30s, which is kind of the peak of what you want in Test cricket, because you don't become worse players with age, with that age, like you might in, say, a more dynamic sport like rugby league, where players don't often play past 33 or 34. 33, 34 is kind of your peak years as a cricketer, because you've got all the information and you're just as good of an athlete as you were then, or just as good of an athlete as you need to be as you were earlier, but with the brains to go further. So I guess you want to get back to that, but you can't get there until you've given guys an opportunity to grow and develop it in the test stuff. So yeah, it's a funky little transitional period that they're in, which has already started, and it's part of why something I thought a lot about in the second test while they get thrashed against England. It's like, yeah, but this is a different team. Like, this is a transitioning team, and they can't just turn to Neil Wagner to bowl 15 overs of bounce or into the wind in Wellington or whatever. Like, you can't just get BJ Watling to wander in and stop the collapse with a great gritty kind of 30 off 100 deliveries or something like that, building a partnership with someone else. And they don't have these options anymore. They're soon to not have the Tim Southee option, although I think they already kind of don't have the Tim Southee option of what it's been. So it is a team in transition. It is a team that will continue to be in transition for a little bit. There's context to keep in mind about the Blackcaps, because it's not so much about youth as it is about experience. I think they have inexperienced players in this team who won't necessarily know how to handle certain situations, and we've seen that, and maybe they'll continue to fluctuate a little bit in their results, but the ability, the talent, the vision is fairly clear to see.
I'd turn it up to say Will O'Rourke, Ravindra, Phillips, holy trinity of younger Blackcaps who are now certified first 11 players. Nathan Smith is in the tier below, having just played 2 tests.
I was to say Nathan Smith, yeah.
And I'd say Smith is in the second tier with the ghost seamers, the seamers who haven't bowled this summer, because like Lister's a lefty, he's got Blackcaps potential. Henry Shipley played ODIs and T20s, but he's a bit further down the track, a bit further down the depth chart. But Jamieson and Sears have already played Test cricket, so they're kind of sitting in that tier. Then you get into Mariu, Hay, and I do think Zach Folks will be part of the Test team in the next couple of years as well. So,
well, of the guys you mentioned, I think Mariu is the only one who hasn't yet played any form of, whose list has played limited over stuff. If you wanted to count Aditya Ashok, then he has also played some T20s. You know, Folks has played. You know, there's
Tim
these
Robinson's
guys,
played.
Mitch Hay, Tim Robinson. Yeah, there's
Dean Foxcroft.
These guys are there, all lined up, ready to go.
Right, we got a White Ferns squad and series against Australia coming up that we need to discuss. The White Ferns have a terrible record against Australia in ODI cricket. They are 1-8 against Australia at the Basin Reserve, and all 3 of these games are at the Basin Reserve starting on Thursday, I believe. So the way I'm thinking about this is we need to be realistic about the White Ferns against Australia in ODIs. They historically suck. Well, not historically, because that factors in a lot of history. They were actually quite good against Australian ODIs historically. More recently, in the past decade or so, they haven't been very good against Australia. I rolled through some stats a few podcasts ago, a few newsletters ago, and I updated with that 1-8 record against Australia in ODIs at the Basin Reserve. It is interesting to get into the mangroves deep in the estuaries of shenanigans here, because New Zealand cricket is celebrating a big crowd in which they're literally giving away free tickets. Like, that is so strange. Like, whether this is a record-breaking crowd or whatever, and you reserve your ticket. You don't buy your ticket. You reserve your ticket. It is so strange, but it's I guess it's good propaganda. But it's important to note, coming off the back of the T20 World Cup success, that like the Blackcaps with India, that was the anomaly. The White Ferns were not very good before the T20 World Cup, and they have a bad record against Australia in ODIs. Anywhere. The Basin Reserve, New Zealand, around the world. So it's understandable for New Zealand cricket to be hyping up this series, and it's understandable for the media who just regurgitate New Zealand cricket's information to be hyping up this series. But we need to be realistic about what is possible here. Even if the White Ferns lose 3-0, 0-3, I think they're still okay for the Women's Championship stuff. And even if they aren't okay for the Women's Championship stuff, they then go into a qualification tournament, which I'd suggest they will perform well in. Let me confirm that, because I imagine there's been some games around the world. So the White Ferns are still 6th. Top 5 plus India qualify for the World Cup. Bangladesh, like if the White Ferns lose 0-3, they're still going to be in 6th, depending if Bangladesh have any games, which I don't know. So we've got to keep in mind, even if they get smoked by Australia, they should be okay. Worst case scenario, they're not okay, and then they have to play the teams who are below them in the Women's Championship and qualifiers from other glorious cricketing nations, which the White Ferns should win. Now, if the White Ferns if they lose all these ODIs, they don't qualify for the next World Cup, that's terrible. But I suggest they will. So keep that in mind, because the series is being hyped up, but there's a lot of history with Australia, and there's a lot of stuff around before the T20 World Cup that we need to keep in mind. The White Ferns have named their squad, obviously, and we've got Bella James. Bella James, opening batter for the undefeated Otago Sparks in the Halliburton-Johnston Shield. Bella James has been fantastic this season. Scoring a lot of runs, scoring them with power, and I think when we're thinking about the type of cricketers who the White Ferns are selecting, they all have similar traits in that they got a bit of power. Like if they're seamers, they got a bit of oomph. Molly Penfold, Rosemary Mayer, those type of seamers bowl a bit faster, bit more athleticism, and so on. Bella James fits that mold. She has a fantastic strike rate. I think she's got the highest strike rate for the batters, who have over 200 runs in the Halliburton-Johnston Shield this season. She's second for the most sixes hit. And she is, I think she's had this is her second very good season in her last 3. She wasn't that good last summer, but she has stacked up a few runs in recent seasons. So I think Bella James deserves this call-up. She's obviously replacing Georgia Plummer, who is out injured, and I think it's just a solid selection. There is the fact, though, that Kate Anderson and Michaela Gregg were both thoroughly deserving of their selections for the White Ferns over the past 3 years. They didn't get a lot of game time. They were booted out of the White Ferns, essentially, or put in tough situations where they didn't succeed, and both of them are having reasonably horrible summers in the Halliburton-Johnston Shield. Anderson is averaging 5 this season, and Gregg is averaging 6. So there's this lingering issue that when you get into the White Ferns, you might not play much, and the last 2 batters who got called up to the White Ferns have gone backwards since returning to domestic cricket. Since they left the White Ferns, because they both kind of left the White Ferns, they got the contracts, they got the selection. All the Kiwi media did their little spotlights on, wow, you earned your first White Ferns contract, honkadori. Then you play 3 games, you're not selected anymore, and you're averaging 5 or 6 in the one-day competition. So just because Bella James is selected for this White Ferns team and squad, it doesn't mean she's going to be selected in a favourable role. Doesn't mean she is going to be selected at all. It doesn't mean she is going to score runs, and it doesn't necessarily guarantee that she's going to go back to domestic cricket and keep scoring runs to keep herself in the White Ferns. The last two players that have received the Bella James treatment are no longer in the mix. It's a very strange situation, but yes, Bella James is deserving of her selection. Kate Anderson was deserving of her selection a few years ago. Michaela Gregg was deserving of her selection. So it's hard to differentiate to what Bella James offers that is different, or what is different about her situation. But I am open-minded and I want to see Bella James succeed. So I'm going to push that she is going to do well. Maybe because it's up against Australia, but Australia's really good.
But they are at least picking players who are deserving of selections rather than picking just the best youngsters and saying, go figure it out against the best countries in the world.
But again, they did that for Anderson. They did that for Gregg. Anderson only really played T20s, which is her weaker format. Gregg played one T20, hasn't been seen since, and is now averaging 6 in the Halliburton-Johnston Shield. So even when they did select on form, there was a bit of a stench in how the whole situation's played out. So that's just the minutia that is a bit tricky when you're assessing the White Ferns. But when we're talking about those youngsters, like Molly Penfold's been good in the HBJ Shield, Plimmer's out injured, Izzy Gaze is all right, but they clearly favour her as the main wicketkeeper ahead of Polly Ingalls. Even though Polly Ingalls got the contract, that seems more like a development spot for her, but they're not going to select Ingalls ahead of Izzy Gaze because they've invested so much in Izzy Gaze, like they did Penfold, like they did Plimmer, and even someone like Fran Jonas. But, so Eden Carson, top wicket taker, averaging 12 in HBJ Shield. Jess Kerr's got 11 wickets at 16. Penfold's got 11 wickets at 17. Rosemary Mayer, 10 wickets at 11. They're all in good form. They're all doing well. Batters. Maddie Green, most runs. Slightly lower strike rate than Bella James. Bella James second for most runs. Lauren Downs scored a century. They deserve their spot. Obviously, Amelia Kerr came into the HBJ Shield and dominated her first weekend. Susie Bates, 2 games, century and a 50. Amelia Kerr, 2 games, century and a 50. So I think the selections overall are pretty solid. I was interested to see no Hannah Rowe. I think Hannah Rowe has she's doing all right in HBJ Shield. It seems pretty drastic to drop her, but I'm not mad at dropping her. They seem to have gone with someone like Lauren Down ahead of Hannah Rowe's all-round talents. They got the seamers, Hannah Rowe's a seamer, but they got Penfold, Rosemary Mayer, Jess Kerr, Sophie Devine, offering seam bowling, but they've also got the spinners. You've got the 3 spinners, Carson, Jonas, and Amelia Kerr. Carson stepping into the ODI team as a spinner is an interesting selection, not necessarily for the series, but overall, because maybe it suggests that the White Ferns are just going with their best players. We got good spinners. We don't need to worry about, we need to have 4 seamers. We need to have 5 seam options. No, who are your best players and select them. It's like the Blackcaps. If you got legendary seamers and you got all-rounders who bowl seam, do you need a spinner? If your spinner's your best bowler, you need to have spinners. It depends on the skills and the abilities of the players. Carson, Jonas, Amelia Kerr. Obviously, Amelia Kerr speaks for herself, but Jonas and Carson deserve their selection as spinners. I don't Hannah Rowe. Penfold and Rosemary Mayer seem to get injured quite a bit, so I don't know if you can be too mad. They might just get injured and you'll be back in the team. But ultimately, in HBJ Shield, because we came off a big phase of T20 cricket, lots of T20s, then the T20 World Cup. Now we've had HBJ Shield. The seamers are in form. Most of the batters are in form. it's just tricky how that matches up against Australia. Because they are awesome at cricket, obviously, men and women, but the women's team just smoked India 3-0 in Australia. Now they're coming to Aotearoa, and it's cool that all 3 games are at the Basin Reserve until you check in that the Aussies are 8-1 against New Zealand at the Basin Reserve, and you're like, well, maybe we could have taken the circus on the road a bit and played at some different venues, different conditions, because if you're giving Australia 3 games in a row at the same venue, same conditions, it's going to be tough.
Yep, it's going to be tough regardless, though, I suspect, against Australia, because it always seems to be. It is, yeah. This very much has potential to be the kind of back down to earth moment that the Blackcaps just had against England, but at the same time, the White Ferns won a T20 World Cup. It's a legendary, outstanding achievement, and they will at least get to like celebrate that a little bit with the fans. So hopefully they do get a nice big, well, they will get a big crowd because people can just go for free. So that's cool. But hopefully there's like a nice reception and some acknowledgement. Well, there will definitely be this stuff, but hopefully it's all the good vibes and stuff. And maybe they can carry some of that into the game as well, and keep the good vibes going. But yeah, I would be skeptical. I'm sure they do have good records against Australia in the past, but I can't remember a time when that was true. So unfortunately, it's gone back a little bit too historical for me.
But the flip side is, if you perform well against Australia, that suggests that the White Ferns have made a lot of progress. If the White Ferns win a T20 World Cup and have a good series against Australia, they might lose 2-1. As long as they're not losing the first 2 games, winning the 3rd game, which is the White Ferns sweep, which is now part of the Blackcaps repertoire, hence it's the New Zealand cricket Blackcaps White Ferns recipe of too little too late. That's going to be less interesting for me, but if the White Ferns can win one of the first 2 games, maybe win the series somehow. But what does a good series look like? Winning one of the first 2 games, to me, is a mark of a solid White Ferns series. Winning the 3rd game, when it doesn't matter, will mean nothing to me, as it has done for the last 5 years, even though they always spin it as an amazing achievement to win the 3rd game. But if the White Ferns win a T20 World Cup, have a good series, let alone beating Australia, that will be a significant moment for the White Ferns as far as steadying the ship, because that ship was it was a bit wonky for a long time. And if they have 2 big achievements and they have a bit of positivity in this series against Australia, I think that is going to set them up for the next few years, because they will also enter a transition phase. And then, like the men's pipeline, women's cricket is firing throughout Aotearoa. There's a lot of talent coming through. And if they can enter a team that has a bit more confidence and winning mana, I think that is going to set up the White Ferns nicely. Let's finish with a bit of A-League. So as we discussed earlier, Wellington Phoenix women had a draw. Wellington Phoenix men had a loss. Auckland FC had a draw as well. I want to start with the bloke McKinlay. What's his first name?
Finn McKinlay.
How old is he?
I think he's recently turned 19, but I can tell you exactly if I can find my...
So he is a youngster who 19-year-old who made his debut for Auckland FC. And what I was thinking about this during the Chris Wood segment. Finn McKinlay made his debut in centre midfield. 19-year-old stepping up to the A-League, so it's a tricky spot for him because it was a very robust Melbourne City team. And McKinlay, you could see he was a bit frazzled, couple of passes that went astray, few issues chasing players running through the lines, losing track of players and whatnot. So it was a tough introduction to the
yellow card, 3 fouls in the first half,
Exactly. But those fouls, the yellow card, along with his positioning, along with him doing little passes with his left foot, right foot, all that stuff, told me he was a good player. And it wasn't necessarily the speed, the X factor, the athleticism. He just looks like a footballer who knows where to be. He can make all the passes, and he's going to get physical. Like, A-League debut, bunch of fouls and a yellow card. Like, that yellow card was early in the game as well. So he looks to me like a very good player. I'm not sure what happened in the second half because I didn't watch the second half, but
Well, he got subbed off at halftime, so you didn't miss any
so,
Finn McKinley.
yeah, and you suggested that he would be an interesting player if he was to play in that game for Auckland FC. He did play, and I thought he is a pretty interesting Kiwi footballing prospect because he's like a more gritty Marko Stamenic type of player to me. Marko Stamenic is the Pirlo. He's all polished. Everything is classy, bit more Verstrata-like in the Auckland FC context. Whereas McKinley, he's just physical, but he can make the passes and he's always in the right position. So I was impressed with that, but it goes back to the Chris Wood thing. You got to really be tapped in with football to see what he's doing and just the positioning for a youngster playing his first game of A-League football, which along with a Auckland FC come from behind draw where they weren't playing their best. There was no Verstrata. There was no Dan Hall. They were dipping into their bench. Like Sakai was playing centre back and Callan Elliott was at right back. It was a very encouraging performance from Auckland FC. Not a win, so they lost their win streak, but they went to Australia, played against a good team in Australia, down a few players, and they got a positive result. That, to me, is a good sign for Auckland FC, given the adversity they were facing.
Twice behind in that game as well. They conceded relatively early and then also had to scramble back late after conceding the Nando Painika own goal, but it felt like an Alex Paulson own goal. Like Painika overhits the pass. He should have. He didn't need to hit it as hard as he does, but also Paulson got sloppy with it. Like he got a little bit lazy. He was thinking maybe about what he was going to do with the ball before actually controlling and didn't get his body behind it like he should have because he was under no other pressure. So yeah, rare Alex Paulson whoops-a-daisy there, but it in the end didn't cost them because the goalkeeper from the other team also had let one slip through his hands and to allow Nato Moreno to score the equalizer right at the end from the free kick. So yeah, I think the lots of adversity in this game, and by far the most adversity, even before the game had even kicked off, by far the most adversity the Auckland FC had faced because they had to play away in an actual away game. The only other time they'd been to Australia in the first 6 games was for Unite Round, where it was technically a neutral ground where only about 4, they were playing was it MacArthur? I can't remember who they were playing in that game, but I think it was MacArthur. So they're playing a New South Wales team in New South Wales, but there were like 400 people in attendance, so there's no home field involved there. It's just neutral stuff. Here was not the same. Like it wasn't a huge crowd for Melbourne City. They don't tend to get huge crowds, but except in the Derby game. But it was very much of a Melbourne City conditions there. It was tricky stuff, and you've got injuries, you're having to play from behind multiple times, and they find answers. Like they've done this a lot. It's so many of their goals have been scored late in games, and I think there was a clear. It was actually quite obvious. We talked about it about last week about the Derby game, where there was a clear ability for Auckland FC to be able to strengthen with their bench as the game goes along versus the Wellington Phoenix, who kind of got worse. I actually think that's why the Wellington Phoenix didn't win their game this weekend either, is that they made 4 subs, and every one of those subs, even though they're bringing on good players, you might be bringing on a really good player, but you're subbing off an even better one. So every one of those subs made it seem like the team got a little bit worse, and then they conceded a goal against the run of play to lose a game which they otherwise dominated. So kind of contrasting games there. Where Auckland FC with a team. Well, I mean, I don't know. I kind of need to qualify that because Auckland FC with a team in the first half, they were very much on the back foot. But the adjustments they made at half time, and one of those was subbing off McKinley, who is an excellent defensive midfield prospect. I hadn't thought of the Stamenic comparison, but I actually think that's quite appropriate because I watched him play a lot with I watched him play a little bit with Eastern Suburbs where he played more attacking, but didn't really do much. Like he didn't pass my test for young player, making me notice him, not fading out of games and stuff like that. The fact he's playing at all is already a tick at that level because he would have been 17 or maybe just turned 18. This must have been last season, where he would have been a teammate of Louis Toomey. So there you go. Well, I guess he was teammate of a few. There's quite a few Eastern Suburbs players that have gone through because Francis de Vries would have been playing in that team, and they had quite a few other guys who have. Joe Knowles as well, I think, would have been the goalkeeper there. He hasn't played first grade yet. He's their third choice goalkeeper, but um, yeah, McKinley's an excellent player, and I was thinking watching him and how combative he was, and it was more than I expected from him because most of what I'd seen from him was Oceania under-19s, where it was very much about New Zealand's dominating the ball. He's getting a lot of touches. He's kind of facilitating stuff from deep in midfield. Passing range is very good. His passing rhythm is pretty good as well. Thought he was, really he really impressed me in that series, but he showed me something different in this A-League debut where it's the physicality, it's the throwing himself around and muscling up. Unfortunately, I think he was just off the pace. It wasn't a skill issue. It was just he wasn't used to the speed of the A-League and he just kept being caught reacting where he needed to be anticipating. And that's just experience. That's something you pick up. It's a bit of a shocker of a debut, to be fair. When you yellow card early on, you give away a bunch of fouls. You're not necessarily tracking your guys. You spray a few passes. You can just see the way it was weighing on him. But that's probably the worst he'll ever play in professional football. It's onwards and upwards from here. I just want to reinforce because people probably saw that and thought, yeah, this guy kind of sucks. I'm saying no, this guy is a good player. This guy he's going to be a pretty handy footballer, but he's just you're not going to be there on day one. So, and when they subbed him off, they adjusted the midfield. They mixed it up a little bit, and they really kind of took control of that game. So when I say they were on the back foot and managed to fight back, I think they fought back. It's a lot earlier than it seems. These weren't like snatch and grab kind of goals. They changed the course of the game through the tactical adjustments they were able to make. So, and largely that was just a matter of switching up the personnel a little bit. And, Brimmer played a little bit deeper, and I think they moved Gillian through the middle, it might have been, or they alternated at least a little bit. And just, being able to keep the ball a little bit more and move up into the opposition half. And it was very much a game of set pieces as well. And Auckland FC from day one, your 19-year-old defensive midfielder might not be the finished product on day one, but apparently Auckland FC set pieces have been excellent since day one. People keep talking about Arsenal in the Premier League and their set piece stuff, especially their corners, but maybe they learned it from Auckland FC. I don't know. They've just been defensively excellent against set pieces, but also they've been scoring consistently from set pieces throughout the season. So, yeah, great stuff from Auckland FC, just doing more of what they've been doing in an adverse scenario. Didn't lose their identity. If anything, they lent into it even more, and they lost their winning streak, but they didn't lose their unbeaten streak, and that was an excellent point on the road. And also, Nader Moreno he's very good. I think was it 8 goals? I can't remember what the stat was anyway. He's only played about a third of the minutes this season. It might not even be that much. It might be more like a quarter. And they've scored more than half of their goals while he's been on the pitch. It's not a coincidence. He's out there when they're scoring a lot of these late goals.
He seems like a big old XG monster. Old Moreno.
He probably is.
Yeah. Wellington Phoenix men, they had a loss. My observations from this loss, and we'll just general summary. Marco Rojas is awesome. I'm amazed. Costa's got a bit of this, but Marco Rojas, the ball is stuck to his foot unless, even when the ball is a meter away from his foot, because there was a touch he did where he just did a little kick forward, strong touch to cut out 2 defenders, get it into space. The ball is either stuck to his foot or there's a string there. And it's like there's a little force field around the ball where he can put the ball into space where only he can get it. And it looks like he's out of control, but he's in control. So Marco Rojas was awesome. But I've also seen the Wellington Phoenix, and fair play. I think they were playing against MacArthur, and the commentary preparation, it was all about MacArthur's strike power up front. Like, they don't have issues scoring goals. They're always going to pose a threat. And to me, that matched up with Wellington Phoenix having a bit of a... They can be a bit sloppy in terms of concentration and focus. Like, I've seen it against Auckland FC a few times. I've seen it in some of their other A-League games where they're playing well, they're playing good footy, but there's just a 5 minute, 1 minute, 2 minute period where they just kind of switch off. And against good teams like Auckland FC, that's going to be an issue. But also against a team like MacArthur that does have so many attacking options, it's going to be an issue. And I'm curious how that develops over the season for Wellington Phoenix. I think it's a experience thing, where if you just got more experienced players, the youngsters are getting more experience, so they should be able to fix it. But it's something that's just kind of holding them back right now. But I think it's just a building block for their A-League season.
Yeah, I mean, like, last week Isaac Hughes scored an own goal. This week Isaac Hughes gave away a very soft penalty where he just, got caught in bad body position, dangled his arm out, handball. What can you say? That's a young defender in his first season as a regular starter. He played, I don't know, maybe it did less than a dozen times last season, mostly in back threes. Here he's in a back four. Predominantly, they have played quite a bit of back three this season as well. But these are the kind of things you have to expect now and then. It's not necessarily the not being able to fit in and follow instructions. It's more the from within that structure, little mistake here, little mistake there, might cost you a goal. Just moments. And Isaac Hughes, unfortunately, has had a couple of bad ones in the last fortnight, which is a shame because I've not been shy in talking about how impressive I think he has been overall. But you have to, same with Finn McKinley on having a rough debut. Like, you have to go through these ones in order to come out the other side. I'm sure. Well, because he's replacing Finn Sermon. I'm thinking, look, Finn Sermon must have had a few of those. I can't remember many from last year. But the thing about Finn Sermon last year is that was the third year he'd been around the Phoenix first team. He'd had a year where he got a little bit of a run when there were injuries, and then he hardly played in the second year. And then the third year, he's the first choice player and goes on and earns a big money move to Portland Timbers. Isaac Hughes is in that second year. Finn Sermon at the same... I think Hughes is actually older than Sermon, but that's just the way their things progress. Sermon had a higher upside, so it is what it is. But Hughes is in that sort of secondary establish yourself season where Sermon was protected from these kind of things by not playing in a funny way. Like, he'd rather be playing and learning, but also he didn't have to deal with quite as much because he was able to get this experience on the training paddock. It is what it is. Like, you kind of have to roll through this a little bit. They're going to make some mistakes. They're also embedding a whole bunch of new imports. On that note, because one of the other things I've mentioned, the subs kind of made them weaker each time. One of the only outfield, well, there are two outfield subs they didn't use. Corbin Piper was there, but you're not necessarily going to throw him on when you're chasing a goal when he's more of a defensive player. Although they could have. He was more of an attacking midfielder back in the day. Like, you could have found something out there. Luke Supik, though, was the other attacker that they didn't use. The fact that Luke Supik was on the bench, 18, 19-year-old striker, who's had a pretty tidy season with the reserves in the National League. He's a very good dribbler for a striker. I didn't necessarily notice this earlier in his career, but with this past National League, there's a lot of times where he's able to drop in, turn, and carry the ball forward and create stuff sort of on the move like that. Very handy player, but I can't help but feel if Luke Supik's getting picked ahead of David Ball, we might just never see David Ball again. Because I actually think David Ball would have been quite useful in that game as a bit more of a craftier player. Unfortunately, the reason I assume David Ball has dropped out of the mix is because he just had a whole entire season as an import where he didn't score a single goal last year. And this is the other reason why I think the Phoenix lost this game, is because Costa Barbarouses scored a lovely goal. Marco Rojas set it up. Costa Barbarouses now has scored 5 goals this season. He's scored in 4 consecutive games. He's in fantastic form. He scored 5 goals. The entire rest of the team has scored 4 goals in the first 2 months of the season. And it's too much pressure on one player. If you can shut down Costa Barbarouses at the moment, you can shut down the Wellington Phoenix. They're just not getting goals from other sources. And maybe that'll change as guys like Ashige get a little bit, and Kolakovsky, Rojas himself get a little bit more embedded in the team, because these are all new guys. They weren't playing in Chiefy's team last season. They've been brought in, they're learning this stuff, they're picking things up, they're not building on an established platform. So maybe that'll grow and get better as they just play a little bit more together. But right now it does seem like a pretty significant thing, as the Wellington Phoenix depth is being tested quite a lot, largely because they have young guys like Isaac Hughes and whoever else stepping up, Nathan Walker and Matt Sheridan, like these guys coming in and playing quite big roles very early in their careers. And if they're the guys in those roles, then the even younger guys are the ones behind them in the roles. So I think there's depth issues there where they've not been able to get as much off the bench as they would like, except for when guys like Rojas and Kolakovsky so far has been quite prominent off the bench. Although he's faded in and out. He's had games where he's been very effective and games where he's come on and not really done anything. So I think the depth is an issue for the Phoenix, but the depth is also expressed in other ways. And one of them is that nobody else is scoring goals except for Costa. And they should have scored 3 or 4 the way they were playing, especially in the first half against MacArthur, and they ended up losing that game. That's not a good sign. That's a wobbly sign. They've a couple wobbles defensively and a couple wobbles in attack in the last couple of weeks. So things to work on. Things to work on for Giancarlo Italiano and his crew.
Wellington Phoenix women at a 1-1 draw. What was your major observation, takeaway from their performance over the weekend?
Well, I remember when they conceded 4 goals in the first half of the first game of the season, and they had to change everything at halftime and change formation and move a couple players around and all this. And you're thinking, well, this is not what you spend all preseason working on. Like, this is not how you want things to be going. And thinking, well, this maybe we came into this campaign thinking about, can they make the playoffs this time finally, and then halfway through the first game of the season you're thinking actually they might be a shambles at the back. Well, that's been a complete anomaly, because ever since they've been defensively really good. I think they conceded 4 goals in 45 minutes, and I think they've only conceded 4 goals in the next 5.5 games combined. I'll just check that. 1, 2, 3, 4 goals and 5. So 4 goals conceded in 45 minutes, and then 4 goals conceded in the next 5.5 games is the sign, much more sturdier signs, much more impressive defensive stuff. And this was the best team that they played against, probably away to Melbourne victory. And especially in the first 10 minutes, they basically didn't even touch the ball. They couldn't string a pass together, but they couldn't string a pass not because they were spraying passes, but just because they never had the ball. Melbourne were on constant attack. And yet the only goal Melbourne victory scored from this game was a penalty, which Carolina Vial nearly saved. Almost got a fingertip to it, diving low to her left. She made a bunch of other saves in this game. But I think you'd have to say that the victory, for how much they seem to be just the superior team, particularly at the start of the game, never really created anywhere near enough clear chances to reflect that. And the Phoenix just withstood. And then, unlike their male compadres, I don't know what the comrades, unlike their male comrades, they actually did get some great stuff off the bench. They were able to chuck on Emma Main. They were able to chuck on Mania Elliott. And in the 89th minute, Emma Main puts in a perfect cross to Mania Elliott, who puts in a thumping header. And then there you go, 1-1. It's a little bit of a snatch and grab, but not entirely, because it really did feel like the last 15, 20 minutes, they built into that game quite well. They had them kind of where they wanted. Ideally, they wouldn't have been 1-0 down. It would still been 0-0, but they withstood the best that the victory could offer, and then turn things a little bit more in their favor towards the end of the game, which is extremely impressive. Like, to be able to do that away from home, we remember how bad their, not so much their performances, but definitely their results away from home last season were. That was the reason they didn't make the playoffs, is because they kept losing 1-0 away from home all the time. Here they were on the brink of losing 1-0 away from home, but they found a goal. They had a little bit extra. They were able to mix. I think Mibe Tanaka came off the bench as well, and I think Zoe McMeekin, yeah, Zoe McMeekin didn't start, so she came off the bench as well. So they, good, impactful players um, who were able to give them a bit of energy and a bit of spark and just exactly what they needed in that situation. And it did lead to an equalizing goal. And because of that, they've got 7 points from their last 3 games. They lost their first 3 games in a row, but they've got 2 wins and a draw since then. And that's, I mean, if they'd started off just win, loss, draw, loss kind of thing, you'd say that's just a steady start to the season. When you lose 3 games in a row, it feels pretty rotten. But actually, they're back up to that balanced out kind of mid-table perspective because of these last trio of games where they have been much better. They're still, scoring goals still seems to be a big issue, and they haven't really replaced Mariana Speckmeyer, although I do think Olivia Ferguson's doing some very nice stuff up front. Very rugged striker. I do enjoy watching some of that. But they've ground out results recently, and that's been a critique of them in the past. So you got to say, well, good work, well done. You're fixing what had previously been an issue, and there's 7 points from 3 games. They're back within range of pushing for that. Pushing for finals footy as they should be, as they deserve to be based on the sort of the caliber of the team. I will just note as well the 3 games they lost were the 3 games that Lara Wall didn't start, and the 3 games they've gone undefeated in are the 3 games that Lara Wall did start. Lara Wall did give away a penalty in this game, so I can't be completely effusive with the praise, but she's also been a pretty important factor in them turning things around, coming in and filling in at left back, which was a position where Michaela Foster predominantly played the last 2 years. So quite an important player departure. She's coming in and doing nice things there and covering for that. So good promise. It was only a draw, but it was a draw that felt like a win. There was a little double fist pump by Paul Temple at the final whistle. So it was a very good result from the Wellington Phoenix women.
Best performance across those 3 teams?
Individually or of the 3 teams? I would still lean Auckland FC because I think they had a little bit more to prove from that game and had to do it a couple of times. They had to come from a goal down multiple times, and with the injuries as well that they were dealing with, which are fairly significant too, because unfortunately Dan Hall's broken a bone in his foot, so he's going to miss 2 to 3 months, which is a chunk of the season. Breaking up that spectacular Hall-Peinica defensive combo. They do still have Nando, and I think Nando's going to continue to play very well for them, and therefore I don't think the defense is going to drop off drastically. You probably just slide Hiroki Sakai into the middle as they did in the last game, and just Kellen Elliott gets to be the big benefactor. Bunch of games for him at right back, which is cool, and hopefully that is how it goes. I don't think Tommy Smith is necessarily the 90-minute guy that you'd want to be filling in that role, so don't think that's what they'll see. Do wonder if maybe there might be consideration to grabbing an injury replacement player, though, because they are very light, and that beyond that you might be playing Adama Koulibaly out of position maybe there, or Finn McKinley potentially might be able to do a job at CB. Kind of has the physical traits to be able to give it a go. So don't know. We'll see, but just for the game that it was, for the occasion, also missing Verstrada, also missing Howison. Auckland FC fighting back as they did. I think that was a pretty spectacular performance from them. I'll give them the biscuits.
Lovely jubbly. That is the niche cast for this week. Hope you're doing all right. Big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.